What is good? What is good? What is good, beautiful people? Of course, you know who I is, the good Doc, Dr. Mike, back again, once again, with a more interesting approach to a particular topic that I feel is long overdue in reference to my time spent in the Philippines, okay? Today, I want to talk to you about African American and Black cultures influence on the Philippines overall. Now, recently you guys saw the video that we made, or the minor video that I made about the documentary about the African tribes in the Philippines. But, you know, although that was 40,000 plus years ago, I kind of wanted to take the approach of what nowadays the African American and Black culture, the type of influence that it has in the Philippines as we speak. Now, I'm freestyling this video, guys, so if I babble on a little bit, forgive me. I got a couple of notes that I'm going to focus on, but overall, I'm just going to freestyle this video. So there may be some points that I miss. If I miss them, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Make sure you like and subscribe. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about in reference to the black influence over Philippine culture in its essence is music. Now, the first type of music I want to talk about is how hip hop music, or, you know, rap and things like that, have had a heavy influence over Philippine culture. If you guys are not familiar, there is this popular type of genre of music in the Philippines, aside from, of course, OPM, which is original Filipino music, entitled flip top. That is Fliptop. Now, flip top is like our version, or the black version, of battle rapping. You have two guys that are going back and forth, and granted, I may not be able to keep up with everything that they're saying. I see the passion in their eyes when they're doing this shit. I see what it really means for them to get their words out and, you know, to beat the other guy. So you can kind of see how the culture and how the influence and the passion and, you know, getting your words out, whatever you want to say, how it's really come full circle in reference to time spent in the Philippines. How, you know, freestyling and things like that, and, you know, battle rapping and making rap music their own version of rap music, you know, how that's really played a major role and how they picked that up from black culture. Of course, you got your favorite Filipino rappers, a lot of people know, a dude named Abra, and also Glock 9. And a long time ago, God rest his soul, there was a guy named Francis Magalona. He was like the godfather of this shit. And then you got Francis, I think it's Francis E. You know, so there's a lot of people who have picked up on this hip hop culture in the Philippines, and they have taken it to the next level. Keeping along the same lines of music, there is also a very, how can I say this? There's a Rastafarian type Jamaican culture that is also heavy in the Philippines. I mean, you have a culture here that loves Bob Marley and loves reggae music and stuff like that. So they really are into that as well. I'm not going to say it's as big as, you know, the hip hop culture all around, as in reference to the black influence over that particular aspect of Philippine culture, but it is a very small segment, and I see them. They got dreads. I mean, they really do live that life. And I can honestly say that Bob Marley is the biggest influence in the country. I mean, hands down, no doubt in my mind. Also, I want to focus on the traditional tribal dances that are happening in the Philippines. This refers back to the Aeta people and the way that they actually, you know, had their traditional dances. You can kind of see that whenever we have parades here in Davao for Kariyawan and things like that. And you have the traditional tribes that are represented in the Philippines. You know, they'll come through and do the traditional dance. You can kind of see the influence that the dance style of these African tribes back in the day, how it really does have a heavy influence on the way that the people are doing the dances, you know, in the modern era. All right. Again, if we're going along the same lines of dancing, you guys know that, you know, when it comes to, you know, hip hop and rap music and things like that, the dance styles that are happening in the Philippines, that's also a major thing as well. With hip hop culture, of course, it's the music and also the dancing. There's a world tour, a world hip hop dance something that happens, guys. Forgive me for not knowing what it is, but the Philippines definitely participates in this every single year. All right, they send a group or a representative or a group to represent the country to this particular world dance competition or something like that, and it really means something to the country. All right. I think South Korea wins every year, though, because they're pretty legit. So also, hip hop culture and black culture has had an influence on other areas as well, not just in the Philippines. But I'm just trying to focus on that particular aspect as we speak. All right. So we've talked about how there's been a musical influence. We've talked about how there's been a, hip hop dance influence. We've talked about how the tribal dance influence has played a role from black culture shifting over to the modern day Philippine culture. But also, I want to talk about it from the aspect of athletics. I'm not going to dig too deep into this one because, again, although basketball is not necessarily a black sport, it is a sport that is predominantly ran, or the athletes that are the representatives of the particular sport are African American. So they do relate to a lot of African Americans based off of that. I've mentioned it before, but I want to mention it again. I'm not saying that that's the reason why they love us. That's not what we're going to do, but I can say that it does play an influential part. The reason that I say that it plays this influential part or this influential role in how they view African Americans is because we are now being viewed in a positive light. You understand? With the music part, with all of the N-words and all of this stuff, that and the other, not necessarily the more positive aspect of black culture. Of course, the sagging pants, the hip hop style per se, it may not always come off as the more positive aspect of black culture and how it's had its influence over the Philippines. But in reference to basketball, seeing African Americans, your LeBron James, your Steph Curry's, even though Steph Curry's highlighter yellow, your Kawhi Leonard's, seeing black people in a positive light in the eyes of, Filipino people, that means something to me. I don't know if that means anything to y'all, but for some reason that means the most to me because, African Americans in general are not always seen in a positive light. So when they take part of black culture, and yes, I'm talking about their love for basketball, even though it's not necessarily all black culture, but when they take something from us, or they're utilizing something that is a high representative of my particular culture, and they're utilizing it for something positive, or it's a positive aspect of my culture that they're choosing to, take into consideration. I kind of like that. I mean, that really does mean something to me. May mean more to you guys. It may mean more to others than it does to, it may mean more to me than it does to others, but to me, that's also something that I pride myself on in reference to black culture. As far as myself and what I've been able to, I'm not saying that I'm influential, but what I've been able to educate Filipinos on since I've been here is the ideology of, slang terminology, like what does what's up mean, and I mean, it is not anything dramatic or anything like that, but, a lot of Filipinos are definitely interested in slang terminology, or they'll ask me, oh, what does this mean? Or what does that mean? Or what does this word mean? Or can you use this in the right context? It's more or less educating them on, urban slang. It may not be the best part of our culture either, depending, but when you find somebody who is genuinely interested to know what something means, it means something to me to be able to be the person to explain it to them. I don't know if that means anything to you, but it means a lot to me. All right. Now, we've talked about this before. You come across some Filipinos who are really interested to understand the reasoning or the meaning behind the N-word. All right. We can go into detail about this, but let me give you the true synopsis that I've seen throughout my personal experience living in the Philippines. A lot of Filipinos don't necessarily know what that word means to black people. All right. You can sit there and say, nah, they bullshit and they know what that means. They just saying it to be rude. But sometimes they don't. You got to understand. And I mentioned this before, that a lot of Filipinos learn English through rap music and listening to things like that. And then if you're listening to your favorite rap song and every other word is N-word, 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 you understand? It definitely plays a role. It definitely says, okay, well, if they're using this in day-to-day language or using this in rap music, okay, this must be a term of endearment or a terminology that is okay for me to use. So when they come out and say, hey, you N-word, I don't think that for the most part, I'm not saying all the time, but for the most part, I'm not taking it as a sign of disrespect. It's more or less that's just the way that they learn English. Now, I do take into consideration people's educational background and, whenever they say it. Now, if I understand that you speak perfect English and you've been to school and you gonna honestly tell me you didn't know that that meant something, nah, that's BS. But if I see like a kid walking up to me on the street, little street kid, and he comes up to me and he says, yo, what's up, my N-word? I'm not going to take too much offense to that because, like I said, number one, he's a kid. Number two, how much does he really, really know? You understand? He doesn't probably go to school, likely. He doesn't know per se that this is not necessarily the more positive, this is not a positive word in the black culture or part of, any black language. It's a word being utilized. I guess we need to work on that. Again, some people say the N-word to take away from the negative connotation that it has. I personally try to stay away from it. I've used it before, probably gonna use it again, but I try to make sure that I used it in controlled settings, aka settings wherein other people of other races are probably not around. I'll say it amongst my people, but I will not say it amongst mixed company. Best way for me to say it. All right, so like I said, guys, I just wanted to throw together this particular video because I kind of feel like it definitely describes a lot about us and our influence as far as being Black Americans, as far as being Black in general, how we do have influence over the culture. We can talk about how Philippines were dominated by Spanish colonization, blah, 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 and that's also had a major influence over the country, but we cannot overlook the fact that we have our claim, not necessarily claim to the country, but we have certain things that they picked up from our culture that they've been able to utilize it and turn it into their own, Philippine hip hop music, things like that. And that shit really does, it's intriguing to me. If you guys have never seen a flip top battle, check them out. They're all over YouTube. All right. Telling you, this shit is something different. It's interesting nonetheless. All right. So if you've never seen a flip top battle, granted, whether you understand the words or not, just look at how passionate they are when they're doing this shit. I think that it'll definitely open your eyes to a different aspect of the Philippine culture and how Black culture in general has had its influence over them over time. We can also talk about food. I'm going to jump into that real quick. This will probably be my last segue with the Philippine culture. It may not always be the greatest, but Filipinos, just like African Americans, we're used to frying things. Like everything is fried. Chicken is fried, gizzards are fried, put it in grease, everything tastes good, right? Or they've also learned to season their vegetables and their meats with like pork or something like that. I mean, at my grandma's house, if you want to make something taste good, throw bacon grease into it. That's just factual truth. All right. So, that's probably something that has been picked up. I'm not necessarily sure if it's been picked up from Black culture, but I can honestly say that it has had an influence on the Filipino people. The use of always frying things and using grease and, using the grease of, certain animals that have been cooked, your porks and your chicken and stuff like that to season your vegetables, to season other side dishes that you may be serving. All right. Pinakbet, stuff like that, So again, guys, I kind of feel like Black culture has a hold or has a claim to some parts of things that you would probably otherwise think of was just Filipino. All right. So if you guys know of anything that I missed, and I'm pretty sure there was quite a few, I want you guys to leave it down in the comment section below. I'm definitely interested to hear what you guys have to say. This has been the Good Dr. Mike TV. With that being said, I am officially out. At least nako paalam, which means I am going now. Bye-bye. As always, love you guys. Mahal kita. Mabuhay. Peace.